Hey guys, gonna do a Vernon Lathe video. I haven't done one in a few weeks. I've been using the Vernon on some projects, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it, but I've not been very smart about what I've been doing, because I've been basically using the temporary cord that I've got on the motor right now, and just using that, plugging it into a thing over here, and it's got a GFI plug end, and I just hit the reset button to start the lathe, and I'm hitting the trip button to shut it off, and it's not easy to get to, and if I had to shut this off real quick in an emergency, I wouldn't be able to do it. That's dumb. So I'm going to take care of something that I've been putting off way too long, and that's wiring this so I can use the drum switch here. And the only defense I have of why I haven't gotten around to doing this was because it's so hard to get to the wiring back there for the motor that I didn't want to finish the wiring until I had settled on whether or not I was going to wire this lathe for 220 or 120. That's a dual voltage motor. I'm going to temporarily set up for 120, and I thought that at some point I was going to wire for 220. But I'm happy with the performance I'm getting out of the motor at 120. So I really don't see the point in going through the trouble of running a 220 line over here just for this lathe. So I'm going to I'm going to stick with the 120. If down the road I'm turning something and the thing just doesn't seem to have enough power, then maybe I'll revisit that. But for now, I just want to get this thing wired. So I want to properly wire it to the drum switch. The drum switch is easily located here. This is the classic drum switch that has the forward reverse, and someone has installed a screw that locks out the reverse on this, and I'm sure the reason why they did that was so that they didn't inadvertently hit the drum switch into reverse, which could result in the chuck unscrewing rapidly and dangerously, and at the very minimum you could run into the chuck falling off and damaging the ways or something else, or you could get hurt. So I'm going to leave this locked out like this. I have no reason to reverse the lathe. Not to mention that would involve actually doing some rewiring in the motor of the start winding and running that into here. I'm not going to go through all that. I'm just going to use this as a regular on-off switch. This is where it was mounted when I bought the lathe. The problem is that this guard, it's mounted to the base of the headstock here, but it's flopping around, and so this is kind of not the ideal thing. I see a hole here, and judging from the proximity of where it is, I'm not sure if this is how it was originally, but I could see that this would be a perfect place to mount a bracket and maybe tie it to this bolt right here for the top cover. So what I'm going to do is I've got this piece of aluminum angle iron, or not iron, it's aluminum angle piece, and I'm going to fashion a bracket that's going to come down off of here and tie this to this and give this some rigidity so that when I go to work this switch it's a little bit better. And then also I'm going to wire the motor, and I'm going to route the cable in a way so that it comes down here to the drum switch, and I'll probably find some cable clamps that I can use, and make sure that this doesn't get somewhere where it could snag something. So that's what's on the agenda for tonight. Alright, so I just went and found a even shorter piece of angle, which is good because the holes that were already in that other piece of angle stock were too large for the screws that are here, and that would make it kind of sloppy if it loosened up. So I decided to use this piece. I'll drill a hole the exact size for that, and then so I'm going to just cut this to length first. So I'm just going to hold this on here, and I'm also going to have this pull in a little bit more. Right there ought to do it. Well, it looks like I forgot to press the record button, but I just used this slitting saw cut this off, and now I'm going to finish it off with an end mill for a nice clean cut. I did it again. Yeah, if I had to have one pet peeve about this new camera, I would say that there's no light anywhere in the front that is like on to let you know that it's recording. I mean, I know a lot of cameras don't have that these days, but I just I focus the shot and then I go set up something and then I come back and I forget to hit the record button before I start recording. Alright, well, basically I just milled off the majority of what I wanted to take off with this end mill. It was rather uneventful, and then quite a bit of vibration, but that's to be expected considering I've got this thing sticking up so far up out of the vise, but that's because of the length of it, and I'm not going to get into the how and why I did that way. I just did it. Did it. I just did it. Now I checked the length on that piece and it's still too long, and I wanted to be able to just do this in one pass, so rather than stick a big end mill on there that would be not quite large enough, I decided I'll try one of these shell mills that I have. Alright, there it is. And you might be wondering why I left this screw, why I put this screw in from the bottom side up, and why I left it so long. And I want this threaded stud here. I'm going to use that to hold a cable strain relief so that when I route my cable I can actually have it held right there. So anyways, that's the plan. That's nice and rigid now. A lot better than it was. This is actually a little loose because I didn't tighten these nuts and screws yet completely, because I knew I was going to be taking that off to make my life easier as far as wiring that up. And it was actually easier to just take the motor down off of the back bracket there and work on wiring it right here on the bench, mainly because I've got the this back box right here is almost right up against the cement wall of the basement. That's how far back I've got the lathe pushed. because of the way that bracket hangs way off the back. All right, so wiring it's pretty straightforward. I already had figured out which combination of wires is for the low voltage setting with a 120 volt setting. And they both mark just lines, so then it doesn't matter which one the neutral's on and which one the hot wire's on. But the ground wire, what I'm going to do is right inside here, this is the screw, one of the two screws that holds this metal box to the side of the motor frame. And that screw is loose right now. I'm going to take that screw out. I'm going to put a ring terminal on the end of this ground wire, and I'm going to tighten it underneath that screw. Alright, so you can just see that ground now connected. And so the next thing I want to do is, I haven't tightened up this clamp yet, so I'm just going to push this down until the outer sheathing of this cable that I've got here is projecting into the box past the connector just a little bit. And tighten this clamp. Alright, now I'm going to coil all this wiring up and stuff into the box, but I'm going to grab my cover first. Oh, it's February 13th. I just heard on the radio that it is 4 degrees out. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon. It was actually warmer this morning at around 20 degrees, but we have what's called an Arctic blast, where a big push of Arctic air pushes down over New England and displaces the warmer air from the south. And we got one of those classic deals going there, so talking deep freeze. And that's 4 degrees Fahrenheit without the wind chill. And there is a wind out there, so they've been warning. We have what's called a cold weather advisory, I think they call it. This is the kind of weather that you don't have to be out there very long and bare skin will start to freeze. Basement is cool, as it usually is, but it's downright balmy compared to what's going on right outside right now. And just above me in the kitchen area, I've got the wood stove a-cranking. I got a nice fire going in there. And I'm going to look forward to going up there and just relaxing in the warmth of that shortly. Alright, that's all set to go. Alright, well, before I put the belt back on, the one belt that I have, I decided I'm going to take a measurement, get a measurement, record that measurement, and keep it handy somewhere. I thought I had done that a while ago, but I must have forgot to do it. I might take a trip out to the flea market in the city that I haven't been to in a while. Last time I was there, there was a guy who must have bought out a auto parts store or something and had a whole bunch of brand new, I think they were Gates belts, all different sizes. And I was thinking to myself, well, it'd be a perfect opportunity to get a pair of belts for the Vernon Lathe. So, problem is, of course, they don't have sizes on most of those belts. They have part numbers. And I think maybe some of the part numbers actually decipher it to size, I don't know. But to make my life easier, I'm going to carry the size with me. There is a part number on here, but this is a Maytag belt. So this is actually probably maybe originally for appliances, for a washing machine or something. But anyways, so there's a number of ways to get the size of a belt. I mean, I could look up that part number and see if it gives me dimensions. And I probably will do that and just check it, but just for the heck of it, I'm going to make a measurement. Now, I could take a piece of twine and loop it around the pulleys and tie it, and then cut the twine, lay the twine out, and measure the length of the twine. I've done that. That's fairly effective. And what I'm going to do today, though, is I'm going to use a different method. Alright, so I already did this real quick so that I know where my mark's going to be down there, but I'll show you. All I did was I marked with a Sharpie a line here. I marked a line on the belt. I hold the line down, put the belt on the edge of the bench, and I just kind of work it along like this, keeping firm pressure with my right hand so the belt can't move until I've gotten all the way over as far as I want to go with my left hand. Then I release and keep going in that fashion. And then I make another mark there where that ends up, and then I take my measuring instrument. In this case, I'm using a yardstick, which, because it's only 36 inches, doesn't go quite far enough, so I made a mark at 36, and then I add to that 5 5/8, which gives me 41 5/8. So 41 5/8 is what I get for a dimension on this belt. So it's roughly about 19 inches when it's folded like that, which is how most of the belts are when they're being sold. So when I'm looking through the piles of belts, if I see anything that's, markedly shorter or longer than that 19 inch or 20 inch mark, I could discount those right away. But again, like I said, hopefully I'll be able to decipher some of the part numbers I find on the belts. Well, I don't even know if the guy's going to still have the belts. That was over a month ago that I was out there. Alright, so I got the belt back on, and one of the things I'm going to be cognizant of when I'm belt shopping is the fact that I've got this adjuster right here set all the way back, so I could get by with a belt a little bit shorter because I can move this motor forward, but I really probably couldn't get away with a belt any longer than this one. Well, the radio announcer, it seems like every time he comes on for a station identification break and gives the temperature, it drops another degree. I heard it go down to 4 degrees, 3 degrees, 2 degrees, and now he just said 1 degree. So I'm wondering whether or not it's going to hit 0 before I decide to quit for the night. I'm just looking for some good-sized ring terminals here for inside that drum switch, the connections. These should work fine. Now normally wiring a drum switch can be a little involved if you're wiring it and planning on using it as an actual forward, off, reverse switch. But in my particular application, because I'm not using it, I'm only using it for on-off, I have a much easier time here. Because basically I'm only going to use this switch. This drum switch is actually a 3-conductor switch. So there are actually 3 connections that are opening and closing depending on how the switch is thrown. So what typically happens is all 3 connections make in this position, none of the connections make in the middle position, and then this locked out position, if I flipped it to that, all 3 connections would make, but 2 of the connections would reverse, and those are what you have to run your start winding through. So that's why it gets a little more involved. And for 3-phase it's easy, because for 3-phase you've got the 3 wires coming in for each phase, and if you reverse any 2, that automatically is going to reverse the rotation of the motor. So that makes it easy. If you have a single-phase motor and you want to reverse rotation and use a drum switch, then the wiring gets a little trickier because, well, first of all, you've got to go into the motor and see whether or not you can isolate the start winding. Sometimes you can, and it's pretty easy. Sometimes it's not worth the effort. Sometimes it's easier to get into the motor. But anyways, yeah, for our case here, oops, good thing that didn't fall. For my case here, I should say, all I really care about is that I get power to the 2 hot leads. Well, I knew that was going to happen. See, that's why I was talking about how actually easier. That's why I hadn't tightened these screws previously, because I knew that I might want to do what I'm about to do right now, which is pop one of these screws out just so I can turn this down like this. Okay. And let gravity help me with this job. No, of course not. That's all I need. Sometimes you can use gravity to your advantage. Notice one of these screws is silver and the other two are brass. Typically your silver screw is going to be your neutral, and then your brass is going to be your hot, which in this particular case, I mean, I do have a white wire going there and a black wire going here, but the reality is that these are both hot wires in this application because of the way this motor is designed. Now on the primary side of the switch, I can be a little more finicky about observing. I almost said polarity. That's not what I want to say, but in other words, I want the neutral wire in the correct place on the input side, because if you look at the electrical outlet, one blade is wider than the other. I forget which is which, but one's always going to be the neutral. All right, so that side's wired. Oh man, my ears are going to be ringing for an hour now. Guess that's the sound of a good quality Williams forged wrench when it rings like that. Now I watched myself put it underneath there. Why the hell didn't I notice? Why didn't I realize it was going to fall? Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. But I got to get my cord that I'm going to use. Wiring a switch for my lathe. In case anybody's wondering who I'm speaking to, my son Mark just came down here. Mark's interested in electricity. So see, Mark, this cord, I'm going to have this cord plugged in, and the power is going to come into the switch here. And I'll be able to, this is off actually in the middle here, and then I'll be able to flip this switch, you know, the power will come out this black cord, go to the motor. And of course it's got to complete the circuit, so it comes back through another wire. That's why there's more than one wire inside this big black cable. This is just a covering. There's actually 3 wires in here, but only 2 of them are carrying the power. The third one is for safety. It's called a ground. So I'm almost done, and then we can turn it on. This is a special kind of switch. It's for forward and reverse, but I'm not using it for that. I'm only using it for on and off. So I had to see, I put it in the on position. I look at these contacts right here, and when I put it in the on position, all 3 of these contacts touch over here, and I wanted to see which ones touch over here, and it turns out it's these 2, so that worked out good. That's exactly how I wanted it. Oh, yeah. Now you see, so that's why I don't have the kids down here. My 9-year-old just dropped my stereo indicator on the ground. Anyways, I'm just gonna hook up these 2 ground wires. Oh yeah, I gotta wrap this one around this way so it doesn't get in the way where the cover goes. Yeah, I guess so. Mark already dropped one of my things and tried to break it, so the more the merrier, I guess. 0 degrees outside. That's what the radio says.
So that switch did not come like if
It wasn't all hooked up correctly. It was just kind of. I had to take it all apart anyways to move it here. I never hooked it all back up when I got done. This little diagram fell off that was glued in there. I don't really want that to get lost. Well. Alright, that's good. Now, just have to find what no. I'm looking for the nut that goes on this bolt up here that I took off. I have to reroute this wire. I gotta have it come up here and have some ties and stuff. I don't want it hanging in the way like this. But otherwise, it should work. A lot better than having to reach down there and fiddle with that thing, right?
the motor just did a spark.
In the back of the motor, that's normal. Lights dim.
Oh, we're doing this, right, Daddy? Up in our circuit.
Yeah, sure.
Remember when we
Yeah, the motor's taking some of the power from the light. just when it starts. But once the motor starts running, it takes less electricity. So when it first starts, the motor takes a lot of electricity. So that's why it flickers. Alright? So after supper we'll come down and I'll show you how we can cut metal. Okay? But the most important thing to realize is this is a very dangerous machine. Okay? Alright? This, if your clothing or something gets snagged on something like this,
You could rip the arm
oh yeah, because it'll pull your hand in and it'll wrap your hand right around like a pretzel and snap your bones in your arm, and if you're lucky, it'll stop there and you'll just end up, being one-armed. Lose a hand or something, or tear off fingers. People who have had rings on their fingers have had rings get caught on this and have their fingers ripped right out of their sockets.
off. That's why you never brought up your rings down there.
Right. You don't wear jewelry.
Long hair, you do.
Long hair, right? You get it tied up behind you, and also short sleeves, because if your sleeve gets caught on this, pull your hand right in there, ruin your day. There's a number of ways you can get really badly hurt on this, but the biggest thing is if you get, don't flip that over. That's just resting on there loosely. So.
Bye bye.
Huh?
Bye.
Yeah, all right, let's go up and have supper. And then if you want, we'll come down here and we'll take a look.